So at this moment, it gives me great honor and pleasure to introduce to you our main speaker tonight, which is Michael T. Michael T.
Thank you. My name's Mike. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Keith, for asking me to come tonight and share, and thank all of you for being here. I'll just share on the preface of what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. My father was stationed out here at Nellis, and in the 70s we were here, and then he got stationed in Germany. We went there, came back here in the mid-70s. And it wasn't, we brought up, as military brats, and it was more of a secluded life. It wasn't like a bad life. And I used to always blame my parents for my problems, but looking back in reality, it wasn't them. It was me. And my father was a boozer, but he had some of the consequences that I've experienced and maybe others in here. He had DUIs, and I remember as a kid when we were in Germany, we moved off base, and he said, son, if I want to buy you a gym set, I said, yeah, Dad, that'd be great. He said, I'm going to do that. He says, we're going to start and do some stuff. He says, I'm going to take you out in the woods and show you, and we'll start fishing, we're going to start and do all this stuff. And I said, okay, Dad. And he said, I'm not going to drink. And he bought a van and back and forth to the military base, and he promised he wasn't going to drink, and sure enough, he started drinking. But I look at it as time went on, and I don't think he was an alcoholic. So we came back here, and my mom used to say to him, I don't want to go back to Las Vegas. I don't think it's good for the kids. And he says, well, I think we can make a run of it back there and do better once I get out of the military, and that's where I want to go. So they came here. And I went to Del H. Robinson High School, and eventually went to El Dorado High School. And I got my first job, and nothing crazy. Everybody has best friends growing up and stuff. I had one. His name was Herb, and we'd go out in the desert, smoke cigarettes, and drink a few beers, and sneak into people's swimming pools and stuff. But it wasn't, nothing crazy. Until a little later. And we get down to the 12th grade. By this time, I'm working at the airport. This is in like 79, 1980. And we got 9 weeks left. And Herb's father was an ROTC teacher at the same school that we were going to high school at, El Dorado. And I knew he was kind of going in a different direction. I see him in the hallway and stuff. I said, man, you got to pull it together. We went to junior high school together. We're in high school all these years. We got 9 weeks to go. Come on. And I'm working full time, and so I didn't have really time for friendship like that. I was still going to school and working full time. And by then I had my own car, and I'd sleep sometimes during class and stuff, but I made it through and I graduated. He didn't. He took a turn the other way. And the thought of that wasn't so significant, except that he had married a gal, and her father, he was from Elkhart, Indiana, and he built the first unsinkable raft. And he came into money from the get-go. And I wouldn't see him for years, and we'd see each other and travel once in a while, and that marriage that he had with that girl, Deb, it didn't work out, and they had a child. And then I look back now, and she partied like we did. And it must have been probably around 83 or 84 maybe. Things were starting to get turned up for me. And back then, the police officers and stuff, you could get like a DUI and stuff, technically, but they wouldn't charge you for that. They would give you like reckless driving. Or they would say, I'm going to put your keys underneath your wheel, and I want you to leave and do not come back, and come get your car tomorrow. Or they say, call somebody. It wasn't like bad yet. But not shortly thereafter, here comes mothers against drunk drivers. And I remember because my attorney told me, George F., who some of you might have remembered, he said, Mike, now they're going to court. Now they're going to court, putting pressure on the judges to get people some DUIs. And, I look back and some of the stuff, the way I was living, if somebody had done to me what I did to me, I would have killed them. I mean, I don't know how many times I would go out and get, and now I'm well away from the airport. Now I'm working on up and down the strip and up and down downtown. And I could always go out and get a job. But I couldn't keep it. It was just a matter of time, sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes 6 months, but eventually I lost the job. I started drinking and doing drugs, and eventually one of my last jobs toward the end was at the El Cortez in the steakhouse. Now I'm in there ripping off Jackie Gahn, who actually helped me get a job later after that, after I'm ripping him off. And the captain in there is selling cocaine, and we're all doing cocaine and stealing, and just, you know. And I don't know how many times I'd rent a house or apartment or something, always moving around, just could never. And the thing was, and my reality was, it's going to be different the next time. I'm going to be able to pull it together. I'm going to get a car again. I'm going to get my driver's license again. I'm going to get car insurance again. I'm going to buy new clothes again. And do it all again, and then I tear it all down again. And as I think back on it, what a miserable existence. And yet, I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't know why I believed the great lie that's going to be different. And in 1983, or 83, no, not 83, in 1986, I continued to get DUIs. I had other legal problems. I couldn't hold a job. I couldn't hold a residence. It was just bad. And nobody can be harder on me than me. And I had to go in front of a judge, and my mom didn't go to court. She didn't think she could handle it. My dad went, and I went to court, and they said, Mike, we're going to sentence you to 10 years in prison. And I looked back at my father, and I seen him just look at me, and he kind of put his head down and walk out. And I thought, what have I done? You know, my parents didn't deserve that. And they left me, you know, until the end. And so the thing was throughout this time frame, I went to lower court counseling, positive lifestyles, EOB treatment, the care unit in 86. And all these places that I always would go to, I don't know that I really ever had the idea to really stick with it, to stay sober. And the fact of the matter is, with all of them places combined, without AA, they don't have no numbers either. Maybe like the low ones and twos or something like that, right? But with AA, they get good numbers. And I remember when I was going to the can, I thought to myself, I'm gonna give this my best. And up until then, I thought this is the worst thing in the world. I had people lay their hands on me, and they all prayed. One time I had this house, and I didn't make the payment for over a year. My father ended up getting that house because I couldn't pay him the money I owed him. And they all stacked their hands, boom, 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 and they said a prayer. And I'm telling you, I got up and I felt good. I thought, this is what I've been waiting for. And 2 hours later, I'm drunk again. I didn't know what was wrong with me. It's sickening. And finally, I thought to myself, I'm really going to give a good effort. And I've never been like, I don't think of myself as smart or a whiz kid or anything, but I always felt if I do set my mind to something, I seem to do okay at it. And I thought, I'm going to try AA. I'm going to give it my best. And I got this guy, Chuck, to be my sponsor. And where I was at, there was like 4 or 5 people. And eventually here comes Bob Darrell and Stan Malonis and Frank Keene and Jack Fisher and Dan Murphy and Rick Faceoff, Katie and Sheila Bright Eyes and Sheila Pearl. And all these people were coming up to Indian Springs. And we had people, when we started there, it was a low turnout, but we had twice a year, they would allow us to have like 50 to 100 people from AA up in our meetings. And we'd always have a speaker. And this one guy, he was like, I'm talking here tonight, his name was Jack Prose. He was from California, heavily involved in AA. And now I'm about a year and a half sober, maybe a year, but maybe a year and a half. And I remember him reading from the poem, and he says that we had to admit to our innermost selves that we're real alcoholic. And I started shaking. And I thought, geez, have I done that? Have I admitted to my innermost self I'm real alcoholic? And then I realized that by the action I was taking, I had done that. because you wouldn't do what I'm doing in AA if you didn't know you were a real alcoholic. And so, I was getting past step one. And then all I had to do was look at my own experience, my track record. I'm an alcoholic. I'm the real deal. And so I started doing Alcoholics Anonymous, and in spite of my circumstances, I started working. I ended up getting a private room, private cell, and I started falling in love with Alcoholics Anonymous. And we had 3 meetings a week in the beginning, and actually 2. And then when I left, we had 5. And we had the big speaker meetings twice a year, and a good turnout, good fellowship, and good fun. And my first sponsor, Chuck, I spent a lot of time with Chuck. And Chuck, he unfortunately didn't stay sober. He left before I got out, and he relapsed, and I haven't heard from him in years. And a good family too, and all that, but he didn't stay sober. But Chuck asked me something one time, and he said, Mike, he says, if it never gets any better, is it okay? And I had this reflection. I thought, yeah, it kind of is actually, because up until then I haven't been able to ever stay sober. And you could say, oh well, yeah, but people in prison don't get pruno. And well, yeah, they do, and they go to the hole, because I've seen them and I witnessed it, and I could have got drunk too, but I wanted to really try and do this. And even in as much as one guy, somebody gave him something. He stuck it in his body somewhere, and it busted, and he died. And I seen that too. And this was with my own eyes. So I know that stuff was going on. I just subscribed to try and do Alcoholics Anonymous and give it my best effort. And if it didn't work, I couldn't say it didn't work. Because prior to that, I thought AA is for a bunch of losers. And finally, I became one. And so I kept coming to AA, and Chuck was right. He said, if it never gets any better, is it okay? And I thought, yeah. In spite of everything that's going on, it is okay. At least I know I'm sober. I don't have to wake up what happened the night before. Who wet the bed? It was always me. I was a bedwetter too. And I'll say that we're saying that some of the regrets I have in the early years was one, I'm going to pass on that part. I got Chuck to be my sponsor, and I did a 5th step. I put it all down, and I told Chuck everything. And I remember thinking, and he just kind of sat there, and I thought he was falling asleep on me, actually. And I looked up at him and I said, are you sleeping? And he said, no, I'm listening. I'm just got my eyes closed. I'm listening. And it took probably an hour and 15 minutes, and I didn't get the impact of what I had done until later. But I remember, about a couple days later, I'm coming down the rotunda and I see Chuck. I remember thinking to myself, why the hell did I tell him everything? I mean, this is stuff that I wasn't proud of. And I kind of put my head down. And then I realized sometime after that, you know what? I'm free. I'm not saying that everybody in Alcoholics Anonymous has a conscience. I don't know that's true. But I do believe that everybody that's an alcoholic, that's a real alcoholic, has a conscience. And some of the stuff that really bothered me, and when you get sober, you know it's there, And we all can take it for so long, but eventually, and I look back on it too, and there was a time, and I think the real reason too why I did the 5th step, is because I was getting into a depression. And I told Chuck everything. So when I got out, somebody, and I just say this for the benefit of anybody that's maybe struggling in the way of getting sober. They told me, they said, Mike, when you get out, the first thing you should do is go to an AA meeting. And I thought, okay. And my brother picked me up, and the first thing I did was we went and got a steak. And the next thing we did after that, we went to an AA meeting. And I've been coming to AA ever since. As far as I'm concerned, if you're an alcoholic, there's nothing like this in the world. There's nothing like this in the world. Frank Keene, I met him in Indian Springs, and when Chuck relapsed, and I asked Frank to be my sponsor. And we had an amazing 30 plus years. And, I wonder sometimes, where would I be if I hadn't met Frank? where would I be? A convicted felon. I go to there was a guy, I used to drink so much, and there was a guy named David Shore. And his brother and him smoked a little reefer, and they knew my brother. I wasn't friends with him. I knew him, and we socialized, but I wasn't friends, and I didn't hang out with him. But I would get so drunk, I got where I couldn't hold a job. And I taught David how to carry a food tray, right? So we could go, and back then the casinos didn't care if you were drinking. If you could pull your weight, you're okay. And I would go to the union because I knew him down there, mostly because I bribed him. I would get the union slips for us, and David would be my ride. Now I'm drinking, and so because I taught him how to carry the tray, he would run and get the food, and I would serve it. And up until then, he didn't know how to wait tables. Well, when I went to the can, my brother, some people here know him, Jim, he came up and he told me, he says, "Oh, did you hear about David?" And I go, "No, what happened?" He goes, "Oh, he got a full-time banquet waiter job at the Sahara." I said, "Really?" And I stewed on that for a couple of days. I thought, damn, that don't seem right. I teach him how to wait tables. He gets a full-time waiter job and I go to prison. I mean, that don't make sense. And what happened was when I got out, David, so it was 1989, they just opened up the Mirage, and he was going from the Sahara to the Mirage. And he said, "Mike," he says, "you want me to put a word in for you? You could probably get my job if you wanted at the Sahara. I'm moving on to the Mirage." I said, "Yeah." So I went down and I tried out, and they liked me, and I like them. For somebody that hasn't even been around people forever, it seemed like 3 years almost, I did fine, and they wanted to keep me. The problem was, about 2 weeks in, they came up to me and they said, "Mike, we need to go to personnel." And I said, "Okay." I said, "We want to go, like, no, we'll go tomorrow." They said, "You're off tomorrow, right?" I go, "Yeah." They said, "Be here at 11 o'clock. I go, "Okay." So I would do what a normal newcomer kind of person is in AA. I call my sponsor. I said, "Frank, here it comes." He said, "What?" I said, "I'm going to get the boot." I lied on the application. I told you I did it. I said, "God darn it." I'm saying that because of where we are. I said, "I want to keep this job. I like this job, Frank." I said, "I shouldn't have lied, but I did, and I know I did." He says, "Mike," he says, "we have a tendency to think the worst." He says, "You think they like you, right?" I said, "Yeah." "And you like them, yeah?" He said, "I think you're going to be okay." I said, "Frank, you don't even know how it works around here. In the casino business, you get a termination after 30 days, no cost. They give you a paper, that's it. Now they want to go to personnel tomorrow." He says, "Mike, pray about it. Start saying that serenity prayer." I thought, oh God, here we go again. Here we go with the serenity prayer. I started saying it, just like Frank said. I went home and prayed. And I'm pacing too. I'm a nervous wreck. I think I'm going to lose the job. I walk in there and the lady says, "Sir, did you lie on your application?" I said, "Yes, I did." She said, "Do you know that when you come in and apply for a job at the Sierra Hotel and you lie on the application, it's called dissemination of character." I'll never forget those words. And I said, "Yes." She says, "We turn that into Metro and they get a police report. It comes back on you." And she kind of looked at me like she couldn't believe I was in prison. I was. And she said, "I'm going to have to ask you to step out." I said, "Okay." And I said, "Ma'am, if I lose my job, I understand. I didn't want to lie, and I lied anyway. And the reason I did lie, though, is because I felt if I would have told the truth, I wouldn't even have a chance to try out. But I understand." And my boss, she was taller than me. She had these heels on. I remember it like it was yesterday. Her name was Lois. And she walked out with me. And she's very nice dressed, professional. And she looked down at me and she says, "I need your ID, I need your pager, I need your keys for all the hotel rooms, the Cleopatra and the boardroom and this and that." I said, "Yeah." And she says, "Mike, I'm going to do what I can. I don't want to lose you." And I looked up at her and I said, "I don't want to be lost." I got to keep that job. She said, call me at 5 o'clock that next day. And I called her like 5 minutes to 5, 5 o'clock, 5 after 5. Finally, she picked up. She said, come to work tomorrow. So she went to somebody, either Paul Loudon or John Bonney, and got me pushed through. Now, or call it what you want, right? But I tell you what I was going to talk about earlier before I kind of got choked up a little bit. We all get this, I think. And I remember when I was at Indian Springs, my mother was going in for a heart operation. And I was supposed to call her at a certain time. Back then they had an MCI number or something. I wrote down the number and say like my time would be to call her would be 12 o'clock. I forgot. I took a nap. I fell asleep. I worked while I was in there. I did all this stuff. But besides all that, I just forgot. When I had remembered, it was like 1:30. So I go to the car gate and I said, excuse me, can we work this number? And he says, you're supposed to do it at 12 o'clock. I said, yeah, you're right. And I let it go. And I started thinking to myself, Mike, try anyway. And then my head told me, no, you missed it. It's 12 o'clock. That's self-talk. And I thought, go call your mom. And I didn't listen to it again. I thought, you missed it. You're supposed to call at 12 o'clock. Now it's almost 2 o'clock. She had surgery, like a quadruple bypass, and they, for whatever reason, delayed the surgery to start it. In other words, had I called. You know, the thing is we all get those messages, or call it spiritual connection, or God, or whatever you want. And it's up to us and me and all of us to recognize it when it happens. Had I listened to it, I would have been able to get through. She didn't make it. There's one regret I got in all my life is that. In 1988, I had a chance to go to, I talked to my boss and I could realize that where I was at, I would always just be a waiter and I always wanted to do something else. So I said to my boss, I said, Mel, would you work with me a little bit if I went to real estate school and allow me to work here too? And he said, yeah. But he says, this has to be your priority. And Mel's getting old. He's only going to hold on for a couple more years anyway, and he's done. He's retiring. And I was working, I was going to real estate school. I was getting close to getting out. And by then, my sponsor, Frank, had encouraged me to do it. First, he was against it. First, he said, the only people that really make it in real estate, Mike, in this town are people that, back then, Vegas was pretty small. He said, if your family is a judge, or if you're some politician, or if you have a long family history, those are the people that make it. He said, so I don't think that might be your thing. And then I kind of determined, and one day he said to me, he says, you know, I talked to my wife, Mary, and we both thought about it. You should go to real estate school, if that's what you want to do. And I remember when I was going to real estate school, and I was working too, so I could only do so much, but I would listen to these tapes at night before I went to sleep, and when I went to work, those cassette tapes. And I could just try and remember what it was all about. You know, meets and bounds and this and that. And in school, what they did was they had paraded from some other real estate companies in front of us. And they said, once you pass your test, please come in to our company. And they would introduce Lucy and Susie and Reggie, and these are all people that are now with the company and all this other stuff. And then they had this one other girl, Sally, and they said, Sally, come on up here, Sally. Sally is going to retest again. She took the test and she missed it by 1. I looked over to the person next to me, I looked at Sally and I thought, she probably missed it by 10. And do you know, the very first time when I took the real estate exam, I passed the national part, and I took the state part, and guess what? I missed it by 1. I should have never put that on her. When I said she probably missed it by 10. She didn't look like she missed it by 1 to me. I thought 10, right? And then I go take the test, and what happened to me? I missed it by 1. I was devastated. I was so depressed about it. I went around telling everybody, hey, I'm going to go to real estate school, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And what happened was, on a fluke, I got a thing in the mail. I didn't study or anything else. And it was an opportunity to go back to school and test. No more courses, no nothing, just go take the test. Pay the extra $100. And I did, and I didn't even study anymore, and I passed. And when I went to pass, before I did all this, I reached out to this guy named Lynn Luman. He was the director over all the real estate. And I said, Mr. Luman, I just want to talk to you and let you know that my name is Mike Turner. I'm going to go ahead and get my real estate license if I can, and if I can pass the test. But would I have any trouble with the background? And I told him all about my background. And he said, Mike, I want you to understand. He said, you've been working at this area for a year? I said, yes, sir. He says, having a real estate license isn't a right, it's a privilege. And he says, and I can assure you, and he didn't know I had lied at the Sahara. He says, if you lie on the application, you won't ever get it. So I put the whole truth down. And sure enough, I got it. And I've been practicing real estate for 35 years. I was a guy that couldn't hold a job. I was a guy that could get many jobs. I couldn't hold one of them. And besides the Sahara, and of course now that I'm retiring, I haven't fired myself, and I haven't been fired from the Sahara either. Actually, they wanted me to keep working. And finally, I was the only one person I couldn't do it no more. I said, please, Mel, I'm eternally grateful for the opportunity here you and Lois have given me, but I can't do it no more. I can't. I'm sorry. And I walked away. And the funny thing was, just as I was leaving, shortly thereafter, Bill Bennett, or whatever his name was, he bought the Sahara, and they closed the whole Space Center down anyway. So it was just all timing, you know? And when I got out of Indian Springs, Frank had me go to a meeting that very first night. And the meeting that I went to was the Floating Big Book. And it was out at Happy Jack Sampson's house on a Friday night out here in Henderson. And I've had that same home group for all these years. And there was a time where we kind of split up for a while, you know, and some people we changed it to Big Book Floating, and the other ones had a Floating Big Book. And then when that one didn't work out, that group, they eventually dissolved, and then we took the name back, and we've been had it ever since. And I just say this for especially the newer people. I average about 3 to 5 meetings a week. And I've been involved in H&I in different parts of the A community. I met Keith years ago on the Roundup, and I'm working at the Sahara, and I'm also doing some other stuff in service. And Keith asked me, he wanted to talk to me. I said, what do you want to talk about? Oh, I got to talk to you. I need you to do me a favor. I go, what is it, Keith? He said, would you come in as chairman behind me? I started laughing. I said, are you serious? He said, yeah. I said, well, let me talk to my sponsor about it. And because I had a lot going on at the time. And Frank says, he says, Mike, if you don't think you have the time, don't do it. But if you do think you have the time, it can't hurt, you know? And I worked it in, and the Roundup, I mean, it's a little bit different now, but back then, Keith turned it over nice, I turned it over nice. A lot of people, it was just a thing that people were coming to, and we had a lot of good turnout. And I got cleared to go up to Indian Springs again, and I go up there. I used to go up there for quite a period of time. And the funny thing happened was this guy, his wife is sober in the program, and so is his daughter. But there was a guy from years ago. His name was Dino, and he asked me to be his best man at his wedding. This before he got out. This is when I was able, when I got cleared to go up there. And so I called the associate warden, Major True. And I said, Major True, this is Mike Turner. I'm already cleared to go to the Indian Springs meeting, but I'd like to go to this guy's wedding. Could you give me clearance for that too? And he said, what's your name again? And I told him. He says, you're not supposed to be cleared up here. And I thought I was clear and everything was good. I think it was a fluke. I got cleared by mistake. So now they took me off the list. And I could maybe get back on, but I never pursued it again. but my heart's in stuff like that. And so now what I do, and especially now that I'm winding up a little bit, I'll probably do some more. But I like to go to Crossroads once a week, and once a month I go to Salvation Army. I just try and carry my load in Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's nothing, there's nothing like this. Frank, a lot of people here knew Frank, and as he got older, he lived here and he lived half time in Ireland, half time here, half time there, half time here. Did that for several years. And toward the end, and I was over there like at least 3 or 4 times. And I dated his niece at one time, and she's still here, and we're friends. And Frank was kind of going downhill a little bit. And by then, we'd already had a big party for him. And there were probably, not exaggerating, 200 people at that send-off for Frank. Another guy, Don D., a lot of people know him. He took pictures of most of them. And Fern Cove, a lot of people know her. She made books. And actually, I'm in the process of getting some more new books made. But Billy and I, before Frank had passed, we had a chance to go see Frank. And we got over there, we stayed at Frank's house. And Frank, you could see his health was failing a little further. And his wife told us that she believed that he hung on until we got there. And I kid you not, I have had the best of times, and Billy and I had a great time with Frank. We never laughed so hard and ate so much freaking clam chowder soup in our lives. And we just had so many belly laughs. And so, I think, I think that the steps are important, but, it's like the best big book I think there is if you can look at somebody, look at their lives. It kind of says it all, doesn't it? And I don't know, when I realized that AA was like a way of life, and Jason kind of touched on it a little bit, stuff like habits, discipline, structure, routine. I dig that kind of stuff. Billy and I and Jason go to 3 meetings a week, actually 4 now. We go to 4 meetings a week, week in, week out, week in, week out. Unless somebody's out of town or sick or something like that, same meetings, same stuff. And Linda goes to a lot of our home group meetings with the Footing Big Book. And for those that don't know, this coming Saturday, we have a quarterly breakfast meeting. Our group gets behind. And I think Jason's got some tickets for it, and we have a great time doing that kind of stuff too. And I'll say this, and I'm going to close it. Probably about, it was back when the Solutions was open on Rainbow, and I was out golfing. And I had these loose shorts on, and I had ones in this, and pocket change in this, and phone, and take off your watch and all this stuff. And I had this ring on, this ring I have right here. And once again, I heard that voice. You know what the voice said? Mike, take off your ring and put it in your pocket. Take off your ring and put it in your pocket. Right? And not the pocket that had all the stuff in it. The pocket in the golf bag. Because it would be easy to pay somebody or tip somebody and pull your money out with the ring and lose it. And it was a hot day. And I got home and I started kind of dressing and putting my stuff, getting ready, right? I was going to take like a 20, 30-minute nap and shoot over to the Solutions meeting. And I thought to myself, where's that ring? Now that voice told me to put the ring in the golf pocket in the back, like 2 or 3 times. I didn't listen to it. I lost the ring. Now I'm debating, am I going to go to the meeting or am I going to go to the golf course? I thought, call the golf course. Tell the car guys, go find the ring. Well, I think maybe they're going to find it and keep it. So I did what probably anybody else in here would do. I started praying about it. I went back to the golf course. And in my prayer was something simple like this. God, if I'm to find the ring, please guide me. If I'm to find the ring, please guide me. And then the other thought was, worst case scenario, it's only $1,200, $1,500. It's not, that's worst case. But go give it a shot. So I prayed about it. I went and got my cart. And then I asked the guys, anybody turn in a ring? No, Mike, sorry, nobody turned it in. No. So I drove around to 4 or 5 holes. I finally get to the 18th hole. I look down on the concrete where you park the cart. I see this little shining diamond. And guess what it was? It was my ring. There must have been 15 or 20 other cars that could have ran over the ring. 20 people in the cars that could have picked up the ring. The ring was sitting right there in daylight. And the first thing I said to myself was, boy, I'm sure glad I found my ring. And what I'm getting at is what happened to God? What happened to that prayer, God, please guide me, right? And the thing with this is, when it all comes down to it, it really is about God. Without God, and how many situations, whether it's stressful situations in a relationship or confrontational situation in business or whatever, where I can pull myself out of the situation and just say, God, please guide me, give me strength, help me through this. Almost always, if nothing else, it makes my load a lot lighter, and I'm able to get through it knowing that things don't always go my way. And that's the kicker too, is when I pray about stuff, if it really don't go my way, I accept it as it's not supposed to. Because if it was supposed to, it would have. And then I find out later when it didn't go my way, it was better for me after all. It's the damnedest thing. But if I don't at least put some faith and trust that God has got it, I mean, it's really all for nothing, right? There was a guy, and some people know this, he's dead. He's not in the program. His name's Al Benedetti. He was a millwrights guy. Big guy at one time in this town. Any millwright guys in here, you probably know him, because there's a bunch of them at the send-off. I became friends with this guy, just in the way of business. But we developed a friendship. Call it a peer relationship or a father-son or whatever you want, but we became friends. And he was struggling as he got a little bit older, and he'd be in the hospital from time to time, and I'd always go see him. I know his 3 daughters and his stepson and his wife, obviously, and we're all pretty close. And so I go see the guy, and he's laying in this bed. I thought it was 19 months. His wife reminded me the other day it was actually 20. He was in bed, and he had a tube, and he had some other tubes. And he didn't eat, he didn't drink, he couldn't even have ice. I went to get him ice one time, and they said, no, he'll choke to death. And he had problems with bed sores and whatever it is, right? Not pleasant stuff. And I used to think to myself, why is he holding on? And I'd ask him, I said, if you're worried about maybe leaving, I'll keep an eye on Patty the best I can. I just didn't want to see the guy continue to suffer. And I said, do you feel like you're ready to go? And he went, well, he had all the insurance in the world. If he doesn't want to go, you don't want to force somebody to go. And then I thought to myself, and I've done this with Frank and my father and other people too, my mother and stuff, as I get older and think about this kind of stuff. If I could have done anything different with Al, I wouldn't have had another lunch or two. I would have maybe had another dinner or two. Maybe have another little deep conversation like we had a time or two. Because none of us really know when it's all over. And nobody knows really either what's going to happen next. So I would just say, to all of us, including me, let's just make time for our friends. That's all I got. Thank you.